silence your mobile devices. And we'll ask Commissioner Masters to lead us in the invocation.
Dear Lord, the Heavenly Father, thank you for allowing each and every one of us to be here tonight. Thank you for your many blessings, and please watch over us and keep us all safe. And please be with each and every one of our decisions made here tonight. In the name of Jesus I pray, amen.
And I'll ask Commissioner Roberts to lead us in the pledge.
Attention, salute, pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, with God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Item number 5 is the ethics awareness and conflict of interest reminder. If anybody has any potential ethics or conflicts that need to be disclosed, now would be the appropriate time to do so. Hearing none, item number 6 is additions or changes to the agenda. Are there any additions or changes to the agenda that need to occur tonight? There are no additions or changes to the agenda. Number 7 is the adoption of the agenda, and I'll entertain a motion that we adopt the agenda as presented.
So moved.
Second.
Got a motion from Carly, and a second from Clayton. All those in favor vote by usual sign. Item number 8 is the approval of the minutes from January the 2nd. I believe those were emailed out to you. Having time to look at those, I'll entertain a motion that there's no corrections need to be made, that we accept those minutes as they are presented.
So moved.
A motion from Commissioner Roberts, is there a second?
Second.
Commissioner Masters, excuse me, Commissioner Harden seconds. All those in favor vote by usual sign. Motion carries. Item number 9 is reports and presentations, and we are fortunate to have Miss Jennifer Garland here with us tonight. I know she and her staff worked very hard, and she's come to give us a little presentation on work first. And with that being said, the floor is yours, Ms. Garland.
Thank you. So we asked, that you guys were interested maybe in learning a little bit more about the Work First program. This program often is referred to as TANF, and that's Temporary Assistance for Needy Families. That's a very common term out there that a lot of people know. And I guess the first thing I want to say about Work First is it seems like a tiny program, but it's got a lot of pieces to it and a lot of documentation. And there's just a lot of work that goes into the Work First program. It used to be that social worker, sorry, handled this program because it takes some counseling and some action plans, and it really, you have to get involved with the family to really do these programs. So used to a social worker would do this program. Well, North Carolina Department of Health and Human Services placed that program into NC. And it works a lot like economic benefits as far as evidence, as far as putting in evidence for food nutrition, energy. The evidence for that program, because it's income based, is a lot like the programs that I already manage. So we kind of told Wendy where it didn't belong, and then she gifted it to me. So the whole point of the Work First services is to encourage self-sufficiency. It's not like our other programs, which are more long-term, even sometimes permanent. These are not programs for permanency. There are 5 programs beneath this big Work First umbrella. I'm only going to cover 2 because that's the ones that the county funds. And if you wanna get in depth and hear about the big federal programs, we'll get into those too. I'll just glance over those just a little bit. $30,000 is funded by the county for the work first services. These funds are used in two different ways. They are used for emergency assistance. Now, emergency assistance is designed to be a one-time assistance for an emergency. This was not planned. We don't have the budget for this. This is just a one-time off thing. It can be an eviction. It can be, they didn't, a lot of folks around here don't budget for heating costs, sometimes timely. Sometimes it gets us a little bit earlier than we expect. Electric, water leaks, things like that. Issues with water can drive up costs, unexpected costs too. Now, the one requirement that is, a hard requirement is for all the programs underneath the workforce umbrella is that you have to have a child under 18 in the household. Okay, so these are very limited to families. Doesn't have to be traditional family, but it does have to be a family, parents, child, grandparents, child, things like that. Even foster service, parents can receive funds with this as well. The other county fund is, the 200% category. And, that's temporary assistance with short-term financial assistance to support job retention or advancement. So we use this program, for example, the young lady has just got, her CNA license. But she hasn't went to work yet. She needs uniforms, she needs a stethoscope. We can invest in those things that put her to work. So we really like, the 200%, piece of that because it does assist in training skills. They can take a small class, help them get a certification in something, but it's really work driven on the, temporary assistance with 200%. They can only receive $500 max on these programs once a year, once a calendar year and a day, actually. That's what the state makes us wait. And then, we can, like I said, we can use those 200%, really get them back to work, getting them trained for a different job, things like that. And then, of course, the emergency assistance, a lot of times it's to avoid something catastrophic.
So that one's also up to $500.
Yes, both of those.
Both of them.
Yeah. So I won't go into the federal programs unless y'all want me to come back and do that. I will just briefly kind of explain that there are 3 more programs under that umbrella. They are, child-only benefits. And this is where we just kind of look at the child in the case, maybe a child living with a grandparent. And we give some temporary assistance for a year, but it can be ongoing. And this is a very minimal amount, around $200. And it just is, it kind of offsets the cost around, the child. And then, benefit diversion. It's to help when, there's some temporary assistance needed. And we can alleviate it within 3 months. So it might be something a little bit bigger than maybe a tank of oil or something like that. It may be multiple things. Maybe a disaster in our house, something, a fire or something like that. There's some funds. The benefit diversion, it's got a really low income threshold though. The rest of these are built on the 200% of poverty level. So there's a little bit, more folks able to qualify for those other programs. This benefit diversion is hard to, qualify for. We do typically use our funds in Mitchell County benefit diversion when people are between jobs. It's a great way to assist people who are leaving one job, but they have a gap between it and another job. So that's one of the ways we use that. This does go on into ongoing workforce services. Now there's a lot of the heavy paperwork. There's agreements between the client. They've got to job search. They've got to complete trainings. Whatever action plan that our caseworkers, Deanna Bradford, she sets up, they're accountable for it. There's checklists. It's a big program. We almost joke and say it's easier to get the job than it is get word first services and have a minimal amount of money and all that work, when, really right now with job openings and things like that, this is not really utilized. It really is pretty easy to get, find on the job. And Deanna does great about using, alternate resources in the county. She works with a lot of the food pantries, parenting programs, getting diapers. It does all kinds of things. And like I said, it's a lot of engagement with a client. It's a lot of paperwork. It may not seem like a big problem. You got it on paper and you say, well, there is like 28 applications. Doesn't seem that big, but it really is huge. And the policy around it, I'm learning it's massive. So, until we can get really trained up ourselves, that is about the limit on what these programs do. But they are good programs, and they're really to keep people self-sufficiency off of long-term benefits, but to still give them some help. Y'all have any questions?
Which one of those, 5 programs would you say they utilize the most?
Well, we typically always spend our funds, our county funds with emergency assistance and the 200%. We do, like I said, we do, child only and benefit diversion quite a bit too. Especially, like I said, that benefit diversion is really handy when folks are between jobs. Maybe they're having to complete some drug tests, some prerequisites, and their incomes run out, and so that's a really good program. But those 4 we use quite a bit. But now the energy assistance, the emergency assistance comes in real handy. We also refer to it when clients apply for the energy assistance programs, and maybe they don't have a medical assistance need in their house, like the energy part requires. We can flip them over, and a lot of times Deanna can help them. CPS also utilizes these funds to help family. Deanna works close with them. We've done pest control, all kinds of things to keep people in their house, to keep people from losing housing, things like that, temporary shelters between housing. It's a good program, but don't let its tiny size fool you. It packs a big old punch, for sure.
I guess the punch is larger with the federal side of it than the county side of it, or?
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
guess we're
that's kind of like,
stretched on the county side.
yeah, that's kind of like, federal dollars for food and nutrition, things like that. You use it at full sound. So,
What is now, you may not know this off the top of your head. What is the 200% federal poverty guideline for like a single mom with 2 kids? It's pretty specific.
I know for one, it's $29,000 a year, that 200%. So that kind of gives you an idea if you break that down per month, and just multiply that by probably 2.
Gotcha.
Probably be close to it. They're pretty high, Right now, our 100% income levels set below poverty level. So, or I'm sorry, set above poverty level. So that makes things a little bit difficult to do. But that 200% allows us to help a lot more people. So it's a good amount. Any other questions? I'm sorry, I didn't have that number.
That's all right, it was super
You don't have to
specific.
submit those questions early. Any other questions about workforce services? Okay. Thank you, Doug.
Thank you, Jennifer. Up next, we got our director's update. We'll invite Director Boone up to give us her update.
Good evening.
Good evening.
So as we know, January and February continue to be pretty busy months with energy season rolling out and our Medicaid expansion. I was on a call this last week regarding Medicaid expansion, and they shared that on about every day, there's at least 1,000 applicants for Medicaid expansion. So that just lets you know that this is rolling out with a force. For Mitchell County, since this number was quoted to us since January 31st, so it rolled out December 1 through January 31st, we've enrolled 495 people. So just to give you perspective on that.
And the caseload's what, 400, is that right?
Typically, each worker carries about 400. you know, we did hire our new Medicaid expansion worker. But if it continues with this force, yeah, we kind of talked about the potential for that second position. So we'll continue to update the board as that goes. Speaking of our Medicaid, I was, also on a part of a audit with our Medicaid unit, and they looked at 3 months. They looked at August, September, and October. And I just wanted to share, for those 3 months, we were at 95.8% in that area, and the state average was at 71.7. So we are doing great in that area. As far as compliance, and then also for accuracy, we were at 100%. So we're managing these high, this people calling, coming in, as well as, now this was not in December, but I'm just kind of saying, on top of that, that's a lot. So I'm super proud of my Medicaid folks. Also tonight, I just wanted to brag a little bit on my staff. So I have shared some, CQI findings and audit findings. So with our child support unit, we continue to be at 100% compliance there. We just completed our state financial monitoring audit, and there were clear and no findings with that as well. We did our FNS and our CIP, our energy assistance CQI audit, and we were at 100% with that. We just completed our APS and guardianship CQI visit, and that's a little bit different, but they ranked from 1 to 4, 4 being the highest, and in almost every area we received a 4. There's a few lower areas, but the majority were all 4s. With our foster care, the ACF, the Administration for Children and Families, requires a 93% of every child in foster care to receive that monthly visit. We were at 97% for our time that they were looking at that. And we were also told by our state rep that we helped bring the state average up. Our county did. So I was super proud of my social workers for being a part of that. So I just wanted to brag on my staff a little bit.
Sure.
Yes. So also, we did, in February 1st, we did receive notice that the state is continuing to look at the need for children without placements, these emergency placement situations. And they have established an emergency placement fund. With many things with the state, it kind of rolls out, and it's a lot of times we don't have clear guidance. So we are still learning more about that and what that can involve. But one of the things that, when we're looking at this, these funds can only be used when we're addressing placement for children in custody who are awaiting a Medicaid leveled treatment placement. So it's not, we take 3 kids into custody and there's not any needs and we can use these funds. This is more our higher level kids. And if we do not have a placement for them, these funds can assist with that. But there's three categories to where they can fit. And go ahead.
What did you call that, Medicaid?
Medicaid level treatment placement. And Sean can probably speak to that a lot more clear than I can.
Thank you.
But some of our more severe kids, these funds could be used if we had a spot, a building. We cannot use these funds for children housed in the office. Okay, so if we had a place, an emergency placement, then potentially these funds could be used to offset the cost of that. But like I said, we're still learning more. I have a call Thursday. Maybe I'll hear a little bit more on that. But they did share, for example, this year we're like at $13,000, but we can't access that unless we have that child that fits that criteria and we have a place and that sort of thing. And I did ask about offsetting some of our overtime costs, and no, I tried. No.
Can you use it to pay staff?
Not our staff, but if we contract with staff in a different location other than our building,
Yes.
then yes, potentially.
And what about, if these kids were in therapeutic or a higher level of care. And there was a placement to put them.
That was one of the areas.
So if there was a child awaiting a therapeutic level placement or, so either therapeutic foster care, PRTF, those levels. And the level for that, but we're still awaiting an opening. And they were being housed somewhere other than our hospice, then we could pull down funds to help offset those expenses.
But not necessarily use those funds to pay in a facility if we had to.
Right, we wouldn't be paying a facility per se. Now, there is a provision in there, and it's kind of hard to understand exactly what they're meaning, but it's like, if we had a kid identified for placement, but there was another placement willing to kind of house them temporarily until that, there's a way to possibly pay them at a higher rate. But exactly how that works out, especially when you're talking about VIA, would be setting some of those costs as well. And then we're coming in and possibly paying an enhanced rate, how that kind of intertwines with VIA and what they're doing, and also the kind of the downstream effect of you start throwing extra money out there, and then all of a sudden everybody wants extra. So it's really kind of, right now, it's kind of a mess that we're trying to navigate through as to how do you really utilize these funds. They didn't make it really easy for us.
If you have a child in a therapy placement, the LME's gonna,
And that's
so you don't. really-
Probably, that's what they're doing already. Yeah, it's kind of,
So like.
is this offsetting? Yeah, yeah. We won't go there, but yeah.
Let me ask you this, do we have a problem with placement of children that come into our custody, whether they're not therapeutic or not level, just an average child that's been taken from the home? I know we have had situations with therapeutic or level 3 or level 4, the higher levels of possibly finding placement. But I guess where I'm going, are you guys having a hard time when you take that child finding a temporary placement to a full placement? Or are we having to house a lot in the office?
There are a couple of times in which we have had kids that were not leveled. But because of either age, sibling group size, along with age, or some behaviors that were not necessarily through therapeutic level need, but just the behavior of the child, we've found ourselves in a situation where our current foster home group was not able to support us in that. And we had those kids in our office.
And the reason I'm asking this, guys, is, we've sort of had this discussion in the past. And we talked about it a little bit. We got the budget season coming up. And it's probably one of those things that we need to look at. I don't really know where we start. But we need to look at in case we have situations like this to where that child is not in the DSS building. Or until we find, permanent arrangements. And it'd like to be a nicer place where you would have a bedroom and a shower unit and something of that nature. That's why I was asking, Sean, if you could get some numbers, or Wendy or whoever, how many times that happens, if it's minimal.
We've had one conversation, community conversation regarding Isaiah, with Isaiah household type situation. There's actually another call tomorrow, from noon to 1 on that. Via's kind of helping spearhead that conversation, just looking at what's the viability in our area. What we do know, given their framework, Mitchell County in and by itself would not be able to support that. So the only way to do that would be to pull in other surrounding counties, into that. So their model doesn't really fit that, but they're open to that discussion. So we've been looking at our numbers, okay, what is really been our numbers of kids in the office? So for the last, since 2019 to today, we've had 6 incidences where we've had kids in the office. And we've had, a couple of those years, we've had none. 2019, we had no kids, 2020, 2021, no kids. I think we had 1 kid in 2022. 2023 was our biggest year where I think we had 4 total. And we've had 1 recently, which was a 2-night stay.
I'd say at least half of those were high acuity kids too.
Yeah, there were several of those in that group that, out of the 5, all of them but 2, would have been therapeutic level. So as far as, it's one of those things where the need is not like severe for us. However, when it happens, it is a huge drain financially on our community as well as personnel. And that's where it hits us the hardest. So it's one of those things where we could go an entire year without nothing, and then all of a sudden we're faced with a year like last year where we were hit back to back, and it hits our overtime budget, as you all know, and it wipes us out, because of our size. So it does have that impact. So it's like, how do we accommodate for that? How do we have a system in place that we're not hit so hard with those costs, as well as having an accommodation, but it being something that's sustainable, and that's kind of where that discussion's been for a while, is how do we have a sustainable system for us, for our size and for our need that is very sporadic. It's, it changes, and again, it could be huge gaps in time in between the needs.
Would that be a 3 county, 4 county, 5 county top?
Okay, we're
We
looking
talked
at,
about that.
yeah, talked about it, look, we threw out about a 3 county. If you're looking at, just logistically looking at Avery, Yancey and Mitchell coming together, if that was gonna be feasible, because we're just so close together. There's still logistics challenges with that, but it's worth the conversation continuing, and even if that doesn't result in Isaiah House being able to do it, at the end of the day, we have to come up with a solution. But it's certainly worth the discussion, because they may be able to come in and maybe help really be the backbone to that.
Something like it.
I think we've been trying to somewhat address that with the contract employees. That we talked about, sharing some of that, having shared responsibility with, social workers who've been threatened service.
The location would be. Correct. So more to come on that fund, once we understand it a little bit more. If we want to access it, we have to submit a form and get approval to do so. So hopefully I'll hear a little bit more on that. We can get some more understanding and can update you. The last thing on my agenda is just sharing again that we have our MDT team tomorrow at 11, and then we have our law enforcement meeting on Thursday, if anyone wants to join us. There's my updates.
Any other questions for Director Boone? We'll ask our program manager, Mr. Sean Block, to come forward with his report.
Good evening.
Good evening.
No, a lot of changes, just a couple of, we currently have 41 kids in custody. As you can see, we just had a sibling group of 3 come in, so it pushed us up from our 38 setting. So just to give you an idea too, that I was just looking at numbers today, kind of just, and so that 41 represents 27 families. So we're serving 27 families in our community at that 41 level number of kids. We still have 6 kids cleared for adoption. There's been a variety of different challenges. We do have some siblings that are now together looking at potential of adoption in a home. The other children are in therapeutic level type placements, and we're trying to stabilize them to move forward. We have one of our kids that she has done some tremendous work, and And so we're actually outreaching at this time for her. She actually came to the point where she goes, okay, I think I'm ready, which was a huge step for her. And so we're outreaching, throughout the entire state, looking for a home for her. So, we're looking forward to getting her some permanency. She certainly deserves it. We still have, one of our cases that we have TPR'd on, and there was an appeal, on that. We actually won the case twice, but the second win, that appealed it again, so we're waiting on that. The unfortunate thing is we've been waiting for, the first appeal took like 18 months, so we're expecting possibly another wait for that. But if the child is in the home, it's gonna be adopted him, so it's not holding the permanency up other than kind of just that final period up in the sentence for him. Total trial, and we got 2 kids that are currently in trial home placement, so out of that 41, we got 2 kids that are in trial home placement right now, which is going well. We don't get to see that a huge amount, so a lot of times, so that's exciting. And that's 2 different families. That's 2 different kids in 2 different homes, working towards being able to be reunified. Currently, out of county, we have 22 kids. We've gotten that number way down, from where we've been. The sibling group that came in order to keep them together and to meet their needs, we ended up having to move out of county to a group home type setting. So that threw our numbers back up, on that out of county type placement. But those siblings were able to be placed in the same group home together. Kinship receiving payments, this is one of the things that the board had requested us to add so we could get a kind of an idea. So we have 4 current relative placements that are not licensed, that are pulling down that additional extra funding that the state did pass. Kind of look at the bottom at the last section, it'll tell you how many homes that we have licensed that are kinship. So we have one kinship placement that is actually licensed. And we have currently 2 families going through licensing right now. And, although it doesn't show up on this report because it happened after January, but we did have a foster home get licensed. We finally got notice today that they're licensed. We have a new foster home that came online as well today. Looking at the second page, number of calls that came in for January for CPS, we had 12 calls. We ended up screening 5 of those. At the end of the month, we had 7 open investigations or family assessments ongoing for January. And we currently have 4 cases in home. Looking at APS, we had 9 cases, 9 calls that came in for APS. We screened in 6 of those calls. We had 2 calls that were requesting services. And this is, sometimes we get calls from family members saying, I have, my mom is needing services, or can you help just identify or help connect me? So part of our job is also, if someone calls us and they're just looking for services, they're not necessarily looking for something from us, but they're just looking for information, we provide that. So we had 2 calls like that. We currently have 4 open assessments or investigations in NPS. And we have 3 that are receiving case management services ongoing. We still have 2 in-home special assistants in-home cases, 12 payee, 13 guardianship. Those are our 13 that we're handling, not including the 4 that we have contracted. And then the facility, we had 2 more facility complaints, and we have 6 open facility complaints. So what happens when we get a facility complaint, although we may have 1 open, we gotta treat the next one as a brand new one. We can't combine them, we can't roll them together. But even if they're related to the same, would be the same policy violation or alleged policy violation, we just gotta keep treating those each individually. There's a lot of work that goes into those, and so that's been taking a lot. Workforce, we had 16 applications for workforce, which Jennifer went over those different programs, and we have 7 ongoing cases within child courts. Any? Thank you.
Thanks, Sean. Thank you. All right, Miss Tammy.
I will be brief for you tonight. We're 7 months in on our budget this year, and we should be at 58% for all programs for expenditures, and we are at 58%. So trucking right along, right on point. Our revenues for 5 months in, we've got 5 months of posted revenues. We should be at 41, we're at 37, again, fully expecting to recover. We have 157 in unposted reimbursements that will hit this month for, our reports. You will see tonight that, in the second meeting, a balanced budget amendment come before you, where I've moved some monies around to cover some of these higher accounts where we're hitting the mark over. I shuffled some of things around, but it should cover where we're overspending a little bit on some of those. But
I guess some of these things are just kind of out of our locus of control, like guardianship housing and.
so I did move some money in there. That's amended, overtime's amended, our subsistence account where we're having to travel to the coast is amended. But so I was able to sort of recover some funding from other places. So we're able to do it so far. So we're watching it close and keeping it tight. So if you don't have any questions for me, any further questions?
Anybody got anything for, Ms. Tammy?
All right, thank you all.
Appreciate it, Tammy. Oh, let's see. There are no items for discussion tonight, but, item number 12 is a closed session. We do have a need for a closed session tonight, under federal statute to protect the confidentiality of the juveniles, records. I'll entertain a motion that we go into closed session.
So moved.
Got a motion from Commissioner Roberts, a second from Commissioner Harding. We'll invite, you want your whole executive team? We'll invite, our director, our CFO and our program manager along with our and county